Welcome to Module 2 of 5, The Evidence. This module focuses on the Chicago experiment and project follow-through. Module 2 is divided into 2 sections. Section 3 covers the Chicago experiment, mastery learning at scale. Section IV covers project follow-through, the largest experiment ever. We begin with Section 3, the Chicago experiment, which focused on mastery learning at scale. In 1981, Ruth Love, the first African-American to lead Chicago public schools, mandated Chicago Mastery Learning Reading for all elementary students. The experiment involved 400,000 students and thousands of teachers, with the belief that mastery learning could close achievement gaps. The rollout was ambitious, featuring carefully sequenced curricula, bi-weekly formative assessments, and classroom charts to track unit completion. This architecture ensured teachers had accountability mechanisms and could not just, quote, cover material without verifying student learning. The program initially showed great promise. By 1981, 11 and 12-year-olds made a full year's progress, outperforming other age groups historically. This initial success and its accountability mechanisms drew national attention. However, resistance soon followed. Teachers criticized the heavy reliance on repetitive worksheets and referred to the program as, quote, seats and sheets. The implementation was seen as rigid and behavioristic, allowing little room for teacher judgment or student agency. The experiment collapsed in 1985. Ruth Love's contract was not renewed, and the program was quietly abandoned. High school test scores had continued to decline throughout the intervention, coinciding with Bloom's publication of his 2 Sigma paper in 1984. A historical analysis noted that Bloom's 2 Sigma paper was published the same year Chicago's mastery learning experiment began its collapse. The city housing his university could not scale his signature idea. Chicago's mastery learning failed due to a top-down mandate without adequate teacher preparation. Mechanical implementation stripped the approach of its power, turning formative assessment into compliance monitoring, sacrificing the spirit of mastery learning to logistics. Lessons from Chicago underscore that implementation fidelity matters more than the model itself. Teacher buy-in must be cultivated, not mandated. Mastery learning requires flexible pacing, and top-down mandates without support infrastructure will fail. The core architecture of mastery learning involves discrete content units with clear objectives. Diagnostic formative assessments follow instruction, with an 80 to 90% proficiency mastery threshold. Mastery leads to enrichment, while students not yet proficient receive corrective instruction and reassessment. The corrective feedback engine provides continuous, actionable feedback to pinpoint prerequisite gaps, offering systematic remedies before gaps cascade. Unlike traditional models where missed concepts compound, mastery learning closes gaps early. The evidence base for mastery learning includes 108 controlled studies reviewed, showing an average effect size of 0.52 sigma. Bloom viewed mastery learning as an equity strategy. Traditional instruction allows students who fall behind to accumulate deficits and get locked out of higher-order content. Mastery learning removes this structural mechanism. The time variable problem highlights Bloom's insight that time should be variable, not achievement. However, schools operate on fixed time blocks, and mastery learning requires institutional flexibility that most schools lack. Technology offers a path, but without pedagogy, it is ineffective. The implementation chasm, the distance between knowing what works and making it work at scale, is education's defining challenge. According to the 2 Sigma Research Group in 2026, it is not a knowledge problem, it is an engineering problem. We now transition to Section IV, Project Follow-Through. This was the largest educational experiment ever conducted. Project Follow-Through began in 1968 as an extension of Head Start into elementary grades. It evolved into the most expensive educational experiment ever, costing nearly $1 billion over 3 decades, involving 180 communities and tens of thousands of disadvantaged children. The progressive models represented the mainstream in education, derived mainly from Piaget and Dewey. These models focused on child-centered learning, discovery, problem-solving, and student-directed inquiry. Direct instruction, developed by Engelmann and Becker, was the radical outlier. It was unapologetically behaviorist, with scripted lessons and content sequenced to prevent predictable errors. Progress required demonstrating mastery of prerequisites. To progressive educators, direct instruction seemed authoritarian, mechanical, and joyless, the antithesis of Dewey's vision of schools as democratic communities, as noted in historical analysis. The results of follow-through shocked the establishment. Direct instruction not only outperformed progressive models in basic skills, but also exceeded them in higher-order thinking and student self-concept, the very outcomes progressives claim to uniquely develop. The findings were suppressed by the U.S. Office of Education. The commissioner argued that disseminating results showing one model superior would be, quote, unfair, leading to districts not being systematically informed and direct instruction being marginalized. This situation led critics to observe that the education field's informal motto became, when research contradicts philosophy, ignore the research. Project Follow-Through involved $1 billion in federal funding, 180 communities, and 18 distinct instructional models. Direct instruction showed effect sizes between 0.59 and 0.97 sigma. Direct instruction succeeded across 3 domains. Scripted lessons ensured complete coverage of basic skills. Careful sequencing systematically built cognitive, higher-order thinking. Student self-concept improved, because success leads to feeling good about learning. In context, direct instruction's effect sizes were between 0.59 and 0.97 sigma. This compares favorably to Bloom's claims for mastery at 1.0 sigma and the modern tutoring consensus of 0.25 to 0.40 sigma, representing the largest replicable effect sizes in education history. Follow-through proved that structured instruction is superior to discovery learning for disadvantaged students. Teacher effectiveness relies more on curriculum design than personality. Importantly, self-concept follows competence, establishing evidence-based instruction as an equity strategy. Noel Pearson, an Aboriginal leader, implemented direct instruction programs in remote Indigenous communities in Australia. He considered the theory of instruction equivalent to Darwin's Origin of Species, stating that the science will stand regardless of denial. The evidence shows a pattern that repeats. Research proves intervention works, and pilot programs show promise. Yet implementation frequently stalls against the conventional ways of teaching. This cycle repeats every generation. Beliefs like, quote, children learn best through self-directed exploration, or direct instruction stifles creativity persist, despite evidence to the contrary. These are articles of faith in education, often conflicting with empirical evidence. From Project Follow-Through to today, direct instruction programs are available through organizations like NIFDI and McGraw-Hill. While used in thousands of schools, they remain a fraction of the market. This gap between what works and what is adopted is education's central tragedy. As the 2 Sigma research group stated, evidence is necessary but not sufficient for change. The implementation chasm is education's defining challenge. Module 2 is now complete. The next video, Module 3, will delve into the science behind effective instruction.